Darkcast Network. Come to the dark side of podcasts. We have cookies.
Cookies? We love cookies.
Grab your marshmallows and sleeping bags for the Burnt Marshmallows podcast, where cozy mysteries come alive around the crackling campfire. Picture yourself wrapped in a warm blanket, sipping hot cocoa as we share spooky tales that will whisk you away to a world of mystery, ghosts, and perhaps even an occasional monster. Crime-solving spirits, urban legends, Bigfoot, we've got it all. Join Burnt Marshmallows every Tuesday wherever you listen to podcasts for cozy mysteries.
Hey there! I decided to skip the fucking disclaimer this time. But there's plenty of swear words to follow in this true crime episode. Come on in and stay a while. Hey there, Rainbow Warriors. Welcome to Beyond the Rainbow, True Crimes of the LGBTQ. I'm your host, CJ. You can find me on the socials as Rainbow Crimes and Darkcast Network. But I gotta tell ya, Twitter changing its name to X is just so freaking stupid. I've joined the social platform Threads now, and you can find me on there as Rainbow Crimes 33. I want to thank Scott for becoming a Patreon member. Scott will take over the beautiful smoky gray-blue unicorn named Neptune on our monthly rides. Thanks again, Scott, and have some swag on its way to you. If you'd like to become a Patreon member, I'll leave a link in the show notes. I hope to see your gorgeous faces at the True Crime Paranormal Festival at the end of this month in Austin, Texas. If you haven't gotten your tickets yet, I'll put a link to that as well in my show notes. Type BEYOND, B-E-Y-O-N-D at checkout and you'll receive 15% off your tickets. Come see me! I'd love to get a picture with you for my website. I have a quick update on a missing but not forgotten LGBTQ person that I covered briefly last year. Austin Cornia, a trans teen from Utah, had been missing since November 2nd, 2022. But Austin has been found and is safe as of July 11th, 2023. Glad you're back home, Austin. I also have another missing but not forgotten LGBTQ person to mention this episode. Kit Mora is missing from a town called Omak in Washington State. They've been missing since November of 2021. Although Kit's mother didn't report them missing until late September or early October of 2022. Nearly a whole damn year went by. Kit was 17 years old at the time that they went missing. They are non-binary with brunette hair and brown eyes. They stand 5'2", and weigh about 140 pounds. Kit is biracial, white and indigenous. Now, this part is particularly disgusting to me, but it's believed Kit's birth mom may have trafficked them or even killed them, and that's why she waited almost a year to report Kit missing. Kit does have some mental health needs. And I must say, with a birth mother like that, of course Kit would. Kit, who'd be 18 now, would have graduated high school this past spring. At the age of 4 years old, Kit was taken in by another family who loved and cared for them. This family is part of the Yakima tribe. Before going to live with this family, Kit suffered a lot of abuse at the hands of their birth mom, which I believe is the reason they were placed into a new family. Their older adopted sister, Charlotte Grew, has been desperately searching for Kit. At the end of 2021, Kit went and found their birth mother in Omak because they wanted to get to know the birth mother and get closer to her. It's been alleged that, truthfully, Kit's birth mom is the one that manipulated Kit into visiting. After a few months, Kit stopped responding to text and phone calls from their adopted family, never to be heard from again. From the Finding Kit page on Facebook, a woman who calls herself Deanna Nelson and says she's Kit's grandmother, she made a very revealing post about Kit's birth mom, Lori Sue Nelson. See, Deanna would be Lori Sue's mother. I'm going to read it in its entirety because it might shed a little bit of light on who Kit was dealing with when they went to stay with their birth mom. Also, Kit's grandmother drops a bunch of names. Assumably, all of them are her grandchildren. Okay, here it is. Behind closed doors. My grandchildren's story needs to be heard. CPS will be held accountable for their role in all of this. From Javonte, Malia Nelson, Kit, Royal, Victory, Karma, Rihanna, and baby Kenneth. CPS is responsible for everything that has happened and is happening now. The system CPS needs to be revised because it's whacked. Also, nobody knows Lori Sue better than me. I know when she's lying, being sincere, to having motives of her acts of kindness for self-gain. Lori Sue is always convincing. She's a professional manipulator. Every action and choice she makes when she does something wrong, it's everybody else's fault, never her own. She has no remorse. Has she ever apologized to Malia and Kit for what they've witnessed and the abuse she put upon them? No. To her, it never happened. When Javonte, Malia, and Kit were taken away from her care, I was broken. Kit was too little, 3 or almost 4, so she has no memory of me. I had no way to call her. I would ask Lori for a way to reach out to her and know that I still love and miss her. But Lori said she didn't have the number. Francisco, too. She didn't want me to connect. She was always jealous of my grandkids' relationship because we were super close. They loved being with me and I them. I was responsible for them being removed from her care. Javonte, Malia, and Esmeralda because I made that phone call to CPS as I was in fear for their well-being in their lives. I called again for my grandgirls that she has now, and I was told I was only trying to cause problems for her because she told them we have no mother-daughter relationship, and she manipulated the CPS person that she is the victim. Prior to this last call, she told me Kit might come home to her for good. I didn't say anything or respond verbally. However, I immediately knew she would use her, abuse her, and turn her world upside down. Again. Then I witnessed Lori abuse the twins. I got into it with her. I stood in front of her to calm her down as she was punishing them and pregnant. She backed off. The girls were terrified and crying. But Lori backed off and calmed down. I left. I got in my car and drove off. I pulled over and I reported her. So when Kit came to her mom's, I knew she was there. I asked if I could talk to her, and Lori said, "No, you're a CPS caller." She blocked my number. I had a bad feeling about Kit. What little time I reconnected with Lori, she had been telling me that she stopped in Yakima to visit Kit and was getting to know her. Lori told me that she wants to be called Kit and she thinks she's a boy. I said that's okay. If she's happy being a he, that's all that matters. Transgender is common in our family. No judgment. Loving is unconditional. Kit has 2 transgender cousins. Lori said, "Well, I'm glad you're happy with all that. But if she comes home, I'm turning her back into being a woman. She's female." I thought to myself, she hasn't changed a bit. There she goes, being in control. I knew something was wrong, even though I wasn't there. I felt it deep in my gut. And I suddenly became very worried about Kit. I can't explain it. So I asked my daughter Sandina if she would check in on Lori and see how things were going, as I couldn't. Nothing came of this. Time passed. Sandina came home to stay with me for a few months, and I would get her to FaceTime Lori, and they would talk. But if Lori knew I was sitting and listening, she wouldn't answer when Sandina called. When Lori would let the girls say hi, I could see them too, quickly. When Sandina made the calls and Lori would have all the kids there, Kit was never in the video chats, nor in the background. When Sandina would ask, "How's Kit? Can I talk to her?" Lori would say she's sleeping or not there at the moment. I saw a picture of Kit when Lori cut her hair and Kit was in girly clothing. I immediately froze. Oh my God. She wants to groom Kit for all the wrong reasons. To train, manage her to make money. These are thoughts, fears of what might happen. Malia too had a bad feeling and was fearful for Kit. Nobody would listen or take this seriously. When I raced to Omak to see the apartment after Lori took off, I found the mattresses. I talked with the landlord who happened to be renovating it. I took pictures, and I went and talked with a state patrolman. We called Omak PD. If Kit is not deceased, Lori has Kit in the sex trade, or the Mexican cartel has Kit in trafficking her. Lori knows, and I wish I could confront Lori myself, as she can't bullshit me. I know when she's lying. As her biological mother, oh, she knows what happened or is happening. Phew, that was a lot to take in. But I do believe it's integral information in order to find Kit. Kit found out their brother Javonte, who was also removed from Lori's care, had taken his own life just before they went to visit Lori. It's been alleged Lori has drug and gambling addictions as well. Should you have any information about Kit Mora's whereabouts, contact the Okanogan County Sheriff's Office at area code 509-422-7200 and reference case number K224101. I sure hope Kit can be returned home to their adopted family soon. These people really love and miss Kit very much. This episode's main case is out of Texas in the year 2010. The Mora Bar in Houston is located in the Montrose section. We've talked a little bit about the Montrose section when I covered Bill List and the ugly List Mansion, as well as in the episode of Paul Broussard, whose death woke Houston up to the plight of the LGBTQ community there. Paul was bashed by a group of teenagers as he left a Montrose bar in 1991. 28-year-old Aaron Scheerhorn was a handsome, brown-haired, blue-eyed gay man. He was attending Houston's community college, and he was working to pursue a career in the travel industry. Aaron was a bit of a jack-of-all-trades, though. He was musically inclined and had a passion for it. As well, he was taking classes at Mixwell Audio Lab. Aaron was employed by several well-known catering companies. He actually aspired to one day own his own catering event production company where music was a component of the events. Aaron also had a boyfriend named John. By all accounts, Aaron was living a very productive and a happy life. Just before midnight on December 10th, 2010, it was an unusually balmy night for December in Texas. Aaron was alone out in the Montrose area of Houston. But this night, the normally happy and fun Aaron, he was frantic. He was in panic mode and he was running for his life. A tall, large, clean-cut and well-dressed black man was chasing him and wielding a knife. The man had already stabbed Aaron at least once in his chest. Aaron wasn't sure what he had done to the man. There was a brief confrontation, but he was afraid he was being chased and hurt for being gay. Aaron ran to the front of Mora Bar. Mora Bar is an LGBTQ-friendly club. He told the 3 bouncers and assistant bartender who were outside taking a break from the large crowd and loud music inside to let him in. Someone was trying to kill him. Aaron then opened his shirt to show his stab wound. The bouncers refused to move aside and they told Aaron to take it elsewhere. This interaction allowed Aaron's hunter to close the gap between him and his prey. The killer grabbed Aaron and attacked him in the parking lot of Mora Bar. Half a dozen witnesses were in the lot, including the bouncers. But still, the killer stabbed Aaron multiple times and then ran off. By the time emergency services were called and arrived, Aaron was crumpled on the ground and losing a lot of blood. He died at the hospital. Police at first speculated that the murder was a crime of passion and not a hate crime. Most likely they assumed this because of the amount of times Aaron had been stabbed. But Aaron did not know his murderer. A Crime Stopper tip came in with a description of a car that the tipster saw fleeing the scene. 5 days later, police would pull over a car matching the description for a traffic violation. And the driver? Well, he was driving with a suspended license. In the car was 33-year-old Lydell Grant. He was also a large, tall, clean-cut black man. Detectives ended up arresting Lydell for Aaron's murder. They brought the witnesses in to identify the killer in a lineup. One of the witnesses told the police that they didn't recognize the killer in the lineup, but detectives told that witness to look again. Eventually, that witness chose Lydell. Lydell went to trial, and the 6 witnesses all identified him as the man who stabbed and killed Aaron. In 2012, Lydell Grant was sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Aaron Scheerhorn. But Lydell maintained his innocence. His family and friends contacted the Innocence Project of Texas, and they got busy with Lydell's case. They firmly believed he wasn't the one to have killed Aaron, but somebody else did. Feverishly, the Innocence Project dug into the case. However, it took nearly 9 years before they were able to prove with DNA that Lydell was not Aaron's killer. What a bizarre twist, right? I know it happens, but I didn't see that coming when I first started to look into this case. A few days before Thanksgiving in 2019, Lydell Grant would be released from prison on bail, and in 2021, he was officially exonerated for the murder of Aaron. The DNA taken from underneath Aaron's fingernails was never confirmed to belong to Lydell in the first place. In June of 2019, Lydell's attorneys filed an order to have the DNA retested, the DNA that was found under Aaron's fingernails. The DNA evidence that cleared Lydell was a match for another man. This man was Jamarico Carter, and he was already incarcerated in Georgia. Jamarico confessed to killing Aaron in 2010. He admitted to being in Houston then, and then he fled to Atlanta after he killed Aaron. This man hid in Georgia, in plain sight, while allowing an innocent man to take the fall for what he had done. Jamarico received a life sentence for the murder of Aaron Scheerhorn, tacked on to whatever he was serving in Georgia for crimes committed there. Lydell Grant was doing so well after being released in 2019. The state of Texas owed him big money for his false conviction. He had plans to sign up for classes on audio technology and film production. However, in April of this year, Lydell, who is now 46, was involved in a minor car crash with 33-year-old Edwin Arevalo. This happened in Houston. Lydell is accused of getting out of his car, shooting Edwin, and then getting back in his car and fleeing the scene where Edwin passed away from his injuries. I don't think Lydell is going to have the support of the Innocence Project on this one. Can you just imagine being wrongfully convicted of a crime, spending 9 years locked away in prison for something you didn't even do, and then getting out and being so happy to be back with family and friends, excited for the new journey life would take you on, being given another chance to pursue your dreams, and a bunch of money coming from the state? How could Lydell be so dumb as to fuck up his second chance? I just don't get it. In 2020, 10 years after Aaron's murder, some of his friends took a trip to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico in honor of Aaron. They chartered a boat and they took it to sea and released Aaron's ashes. Aaron's boyfriend John was one of those friends. After traveling about 15 miles out into the ocean, the group noted an albatross resting on a floating log and a pod of whales as they lowered a microphone into the ocean to play music for their dedication. It was a tribute to Aaron's love of music, and John was the one to scatter Aaron's ashes. Rest in power, Aaron. Our True Crime Quickie comes to us from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, just last year in April of 2022. This case is very reminiscent of the murder of Christopher McKinney. Christopher was punched in his head by a bouncer at the Nowhere Bar in Louisville, Kentucky in January of 2020. Autumn of Autumn's Oddities and we covered Christopher's case. Season 9, Episode 12, if you would like a refresher on it. In April of 2022, Washington, D.C. resident 41-year-old Eric Pope was visiting friends in Philadelphia. From all accounts, Eric was a great guy. He had served on the New Bedford School Committee in Massachusetts. At the time he was elected to the position in 2001, Eric was only 21 years old, and he made history as the youngest person to ever serve on the board. He remained in that position until 2010, when he moved to the D.C. area to work for the Obama administration. After Obama's reign of presidency, Eric worked for the D.C. Health Department. Those who knew Eric said he never had a bad word to say about anyone. He was a guy who had his head on right. He was responsible, he had a loving heart, and he was just a good all-round guy. But the night of April 16, 2022, Eric was out with his friends at the gay club Tabu in Philadelphia. What do you do when you go to a club? Well, you dance, yeah. And drink, of course. Eric was pretty intoxicated, too. In fact, he was so drunk, he was escorted outside by bouncers. One of the bouncers in particular was a very large fellow. His name, Kenneth Fry. Once Eric was outside of the club, 24-year-old Kenneth hauled off and punched Eric in his face, knocking him to the ground where he hit his head on the concrete. Now remember, Kenneth was a very big man, and almost half the age of Eric. From pictures, Eric didn't seem to be that big. The punch was unprovoked as Eric was just standing there, much like Christopher McKinney of Louisville was. 911 was called and Eric was taken to the hospital and put in ICU. But unfortunately, Eric succumbed to his head injury and died a week later. Now, Kenneth didn't work for the bar per se. He was actually hired by a private security company called Mainline Security. The bar used this security company to regulate their crowds. It would seem Mainline Security had problems in the recent past with other security guards inflicting injury on patrons of other gay bars. At Voyeur Club on March 27, 2022, a guard broke a bone in a customer's neck during an altercation. At U-Bar, a security guard choked and slammed one of the customers to the ground, giving the victim a head injury. According to a report, private security companies are not required to give any of their employees training, which to me is ridiculous. Even my first job at McDonald's I received training, so what the fuck? And that job wasn't manhandling anyone. When the police found Kenneth, they arrested him, and both he and members of Tabu Bar were in full cooperation with law enforcement. Kenneth was being charged with third-degree murder, which I had never heard of before. Apparently, third-degree murder is used in several states as an aside to manslaughter. It's different than manslaughter in that it often depends on the defendant's state of mind at the time of killing. With third-degree murder, the person must act with a depraved mind and a wanton disregard for human life. Manslaughter can also come in different degrees. There's first-degree manslaughter, which is just as violent as it sounds. It's when someone kills another person knowingly in the heat of the moment, which also sounds like second-degree murder to me. Second-degree manslaughter is when a person knows they are unreasonably risking someone else's life, and yet they take the chance and do it anyway. I kind of think of reckless driving where a passenger ends up killed. And like this case with third-degree murder, there is intent to kill, but it's assumed a reasonable person momentarily lost control of their emotions when provoked. See, I have to disagree with the charge of third-degree murder in the case of Eric Pope. Kenneth, who punched Eric, was unprovoked. Eric just stood there, and yet Kenneth still punched him, dropped him to the ground where he hit his head on the cement. But what is even worse about this entire situation is even though Kenneth was arrested and charged, unlike Christopher McKinney's killer in Kentucky, Kenneth Fry had his charges reduced from third-degree murder to involuntary manslaughter. Now, the definition of involuntary manslaughter, which is the least stringent of all the murder-manslaughter charges and holds the lowest punishment, is when someone kills someone unintentionally, most likely accidentally, but the death was due to the perpetrator's reckless behavior. Kenneth has had some preliminary trials thus far, but he's not been sentenced yet that I can see, and it's quite possible he will simply get his hand slapped, and there'll be no real unicorn justice for Eric. And to that I have to say, if you own a bar or an establishment that serves the public, train your door staff. If you're going to hire a security team to do it, make sure they are trained. Rest in power, Eric. Love you, Rainbow Warriors. You matter. And remember, it's not a crime to be gay, unless you're a murderer.